that was more like the hip hop route. We were more the rap route.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I'm just putting them on because, you know what I'm saying? Boom, you know what I'm saying? 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 You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying?
You're saying know what I'm saying too many times. 80 and 90 times? That's too many times. Once or twice is cool, but 80 or 90 times, man?
Hi, my name's Kelly Betts, and today we're here to talk about ICP, their fans, associated acts, and place in a larger context of racist American traditions. Just in case there's an aunt of mine watching or something, ICP is a Detroit rap act who paints their face and have given birth to an entire genre of rap and rap fan known as the Juggalo. Today, I'm not here to state the obvious. This is not a video compiling cringe moments of Juggalos. For one, ICP is a joke that writes itself. It's obvious.
We don't care. We're the longest running joke and we get it. We get it and we're okay with it.
A lot of people use ICP as an excuse to laugh at what we'll call trash culture. And I love trash culture. Handmade, underfunded, raw, outsider art is some of the best entertainment you can find. And there are scenes and subcultures of trash art I've been a part of for decades. From freestyle rap to crust punk. Basically, criticizing ICP can come off as classism. And I'm just not here for that. Today, I am here to look at ICP through a critical lens. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but one I'm just not seeing anywhere else, so why not me, why not now? I need to make clear, I'm not trying to paint a picture of Juggalos and ICP as good people or bad people. For example, Juggalos were wrongly but officially designated a gang by the FBI in the 2000s. Now, this does not make my top 200 list of wrongdoings by our judicial system, but it does suck for them.
Juggalos are still suffering over that shit, being fucked with by police.
And recently, ICP played my town, making their concert a food drive, raising about 900 pounds of food for our local food bank. And that's cool.
2 members of the shock rock group Insane Clown Posse distributed 1,000 turkeys that they donated.
We've always done charity things, but it's always been overlooked.
On the other hand, it only took about 2 minutes for me to verify for myself that Violent J of ICP does in fact follow many underage girls on Instagram. And since rumors of Laney from Face Off overdosing and dying in Violent J's home and him partaking in a cover-up are only rumors, we won't be covering that here today.
Why the fuck heroin addiction?
That will have to remain his word versus the women involved. So let's get started. To start at the very beginning, we have to go all the way back to 1956. A former blues musician named Screamin' Jay Hawkins began starting his concerts by raising out of a coffin, thus beginning the genre horrorcore.
1, 2, 3! I put a spell on you.
Shock, raunchiness, the macabre, and violence are the content of this very cartoony genre of music and style of dress. And inevitably, it made its way into rap. Maybe you were like me, first hearing horrorcore rap with the group Ghetto Boys on the Office Space soundtrack. And perhaps your dive further in was much like mine, looking into the associated acts of the Wu-Tang Clan to find the Gravediggers. And of course, before LP was in Run the Jewels, he had his own pool of talent in New York, including the notorious Cage Kennels.
Alarmed when you see me on my sound man holding a firearm, stomping some bitches for a skid 'em on.
And horrorcore isn't just fun with its dangerous edges and animated presentation. It's also helpful to kids like me. When you're a teenager with mental illness, knowing you aren't alone in your violent or strange thoughts can help fight feelings of alienation. And feeling like you aren't alone in a time like that is very important. Meanwhile, others are interested in terror, gore, and death, not feeling a need to unpack the reasons why. And that's fine. It's no different than watching a horror movie, reading a scary book, or listening to a podcast about grisly murders. Kind of a side note, but if you're like me and grew up in the 90s, you inevitably heard the rumor that music with violence in it caused kids to act out in violent ways. And I have to note that with now a documented 10,000 or so horrorcore groups, let alone fans, there have only really been 2 or 3 instances of these people committing violent acts. So at that point, you're dealing with the law of averages.
This motherfucker was a juggalo and he went and murdered this family and shit, you know what I'm saying? Yo! He was fucking crazy. It's not because he was a juggalo. You know what I'm saying? There's motherfuckers that listen to Taylor Swift and fucking mass murderers.
I grew up in the Ozarks of Missouri, on a hill in the middle of nowhere in the woods, basically, in a county that reports at 98% white with a per capita income of a little over only $18,000 yearly. So needless to say, I became familiar with this symbol at a young age. Psychopathic Records, ICP's record label.
Passion, man, you know what I mean?
Tattoos, car icons, t-shirts. There was even a shed I drive by every day that had the word Faygo spray painted in giant letters on the side. And they didn't even sell Faygo where I'm from.
The crowd started throwing Faygo. Next day I looked, the club owner was swinging off the balcony with a 2-liter Faygo. My manager was jumping up and down on a 3-liter. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. It was pure pandemonium. And I'll tell you why people love it. Because it doesn't make any sense.
And when I first actually sat down and listened to ICP, I actually kind of liked it. Back then, they did a lot more screaming and there was guitar in their sounds, and it was closer to Papa Roach or Limp Bizkit than the rap I'd heard at the time.
Where Detroit's wicked juggalos are coming from.
But as I got older and more into what I would call lyrical hip-hop,
Fuck ICP, buy my CD.
I was less and less impressed with ICP.
Battling each other, fucking killing it. We ain't fresh like that, man.
Nevertheless, I was savvy enough even as a young white rapper to realize the obvious. I should become a juggalo. As much as I hated the corny, tone-deaf stupidity of it all, I couldn't ignore the obvious. A rabid built-in fan base, built-in branding, and considering my origin story, authenticity. There's even a video still online of me pulling an old Juggalo-style verse out of the back pocket, and it fits the situation we're in all too well.
Psycho, threat to society. Don't like it, you come and try to find me.
I need like face paint. Like, you need to be like a juggalo. Yeah.
Even at 22 years old, with my debut as a rapper on YouTube, my horror curious roots are showing. And once in a while in my early career, I'd slip into a alter ego.
Bro, Bill's out at the end, then they'll all be feeling you. Hip-hop is dead. I still fuck with it like necrophilia.
To a point where one could make the argument that my own art has been dangerously close to running parallel to something that could have been on Psychopathic Records. But we're not here to just talk about me on and on, so let's find out why juggalos might be racist. Believe me, I know what any even casual ICP fan was yelling at their screens the second they saw this thumbnail. ICP isn't racist. And you're right. And I'll do you one better. They are actively anti-racist. And so are juggalos. And that is freaking awesome. And surprisingly rare for white rappers from the 90s and 2000s. Anti-racism is a part of ICP's brand, having their notorious song specifically about the Confederate flag. And I quote, I say fuck your rebel flag, out here pretending like you ain't defending. I say fuck your rebel flag, you redneck judges with your racist grudges. And aside from ICP themselves, juggalos as a whole create a culture of welcome inclusion by making sure their dialogue is all inclusive and welcoming.
When you come here, no matter what, you are accepted by anybody and everybody.
And this isn't limited to race. It's easy to find interviews of juggalos specifically welcoming those from the trans community, people with disabilities.
We're actually dating, so.
You say that the homosexual community has a large
showing here at the Juggalo convention?
Yeah, it's everyone's here.
Basically, all types of people are welcome and encouraged to participate in Juggalo culture. Violent J famously supports his daughter, who has come out as a furry, and Violent J even has his own fursuit. Not typical rapper behavior. And thank God, because the influence ICP has had on our culture, whether we like it or not, is immeasurable. And it's been especially influential in impoverished places like the ones I'm from, where bigotry and hatred can be shockingly out in the open. And personally, as a skinny, spiky-haired, somewhat openly queer teenager in the middle of nowhere, I did not need yet another group enabling people to feel like they were allowed to insist I was lesser than or be threatened with violence. How many kids have ICP saved from further trauma? Because some elder juggalo told them it was cool to be a freak. Generally speaking, I get along with juggalos. We've maintained thus far a peaceful and mutually beneficial coexistence. And it's only when we take a much bigger step back and examine the larger picture that a disturbing truth comes into focus. In 1989, a small group of young professional wrestling fans in Detroit decided to pick up microphones, becoming the hip-hop duo Insane Clown... Inner City Posse.
When they were first started out, before they were Insane Clown Posse, they were called Inner City Posse, and I guess they were some sort of gang. I don't really know much about that.
That's right, before ICP stood for Insane Clown Posse, it was in fact the Inner City Posse. And it wasn't just a rap group. According to Shaggy 2 Dope and Violent J themselves, they were a gang.
You were in a gang called Inner City Posse?
Yeah, we both were. Yeah.
You both were.
They dressed in gang wear, flew white flags, aka bandanas, and went by the crew letters ICP. They emulated the gangster rap style in music, talk, and dress.
I like bass, treble, and the temp stuff. Throw a kicker in the back of a scepter bus with that 40-0. Like a big step. And I can't stand the neighborhood manners. Sauce walls chill like Rocky Dennis. Bass in the car, something stat. I know you hear me booming in Pontiac.
And honestly, if this whole thing had ended there, it could be a really fun little corner of the internet that music nerds like me could occasionally stumble on, bask in the cultural disaster than it is, and move on. But instead, ICP grew and grew with popularity, eventually changing their name to mean that they were clowns and donning circus-like face paint that they said was to mimic the actual Big Top Freak Show and mirror how upper-class people would gawk and other them the same way.
We represent people that have been that were born without the silver spoon in the mouth, but instead with a rusty fork. They view the underclass, they view the poor people as like carnival freaks, you know what I mean? And that's why we wear the clown makeup. We're representing them. We're representing the people that people would shove their kids away from and people would turn away and not look at. That's who we are.
At least that's how they justified it. But from what I can understand, that's a retroactive explanation. What I really think happened, what I understand, is they had a hype man who just showed up dressed as a clown one day, and since he was getting most of the attention, they started taking on the same look. So let's zoom out. American music has always been a blend of cultures, more specifically, predominantly, black culture influencing white culture, and there being a push and pull of them influencing each other. And so, of course, after decades and decades, underground as a predominantly black art form, rap is taken on by some white performers. And so, as this push and pull happens, it is, of course, the responsibility of white artists to not steal culture. All artists must remain authentic and not take what isn't theirs. And there's a hard line in the sand between paying tribute and exploitation. So, as ICP moved away from cosplaying NWA, they stumbled into other types of cultural appropriation, namely both growing dreadlocks. Let's start there. It isn't the worst thing in the world, and I'm not the voice of authority here. I'm just saying I'm no longer cool with it. And again, I'm not the one who gets to draw that line in the sand. I'm just pointing to it as part of the picture we're about to paint. Because ICP began referring to each other as ninjas. And I don't mean the fighter. I mean, instead of saying fella or bro or hey my guy, they'd say What up, my ninja?
Hey. How you doing? What up, ninja?
And this is where I'll be drawing the line, because you're now stealing culture, and in a very uncomfortable way.
Thanks, Ninja.
Because you can't just mispronounce something and say you aren't saying it. And defenders of this will say, it's just a joke, I should lighten up. But what's the joke? That you aren't supposed to say the N-word, but you did anyway? Ha ha ha, we aren't supposed to say the N-word, but we kind of are. Really funny. You can't make other groups' cultural traditions your own jokes, especially when that tradition is reclaiming such a hurtful word. That's wrong. Hard stop. But hey, they've moved away from all this. They no longer have dreadlocks, but they have done this.
Fire brains out, Ozzy. Jump out the lights into the pit, kamikaze. Suck on a grenade, pop until your top splatter.
The aesthetic, the beat choice, the delivery, this all seems so forced to me. It's pretending to be something it isn't. And seeing a gruffed voice, older, super white dork try to use stop, pause punchlines and this kind of flow just exposes how awkward the whole thing is. And the sad thing is, these guys kind of work when they're screaming and using their traditional jumpy flow.
Bam! Shaka like a Loki, shaggy to come back like scoliosis.
By the way, ICP has admitted on several occasions that they use a team of ghostwriters, and with how forced and unnatural this is, it's not a surprise. Others are treating ICP as a creative project more so than artists having an authentic voice. And back to what we were talking about earlier, this is not authentic, this is not paying tribute, this is exploiting a culture they do not belong to. They've taken a bunch of elements they've seen on TV, mixed it all together and spit it back out. It's regurgitation. And at the risk of going too far, I'm gonna go ahead and say the only reason someone would enjoy this is because they wanted modern rap without rappers in it, but juggalos. Essentially, you want black music with only white people in it.
Since the beginning, this motherfucking ball of mud been spinning around, right? White people fucking think they own it all.
The cool thing about going to college is that every once in a while you get a professor who's actually involved in the world he's talking about. I had a professor, Prahlad, and he taught African American folklore and had written the Encyclopedia of African American Folklore. Let me tell you, he'd say some crazy stuff I'd never considered. His whole worldview was through the lens of someone trying to make sense of the history of black voices, poets, storytellers, musicians, and more conceptual things like tropes. And one day, Dr. Prahlad said to us, "I don't like ICP. I think they're doing blackface. I think the word juggalo is close to..." And my mind was blown. Was he paranoid, obsessed, looking for racist tropes in clown-themed trash rap? But it stuck in my mind. And every time I've seen a juggalo since then, I think about that. It was a Pandora's box. I'd be on YouTube and stumble across some fan-made video. There the thought was again, a poison idea that I couldn't completely accept, but also couldn't ignore. And I've never been able to talk myself out of.
You know, I think part of the reason we fucking paint our faces is because we wouldn't want to be identified as white. We'd rather be identified as a clown.
And I am here now to preface this next section to tell you, I hereby swear I am not creating this video for some exaggerated hot take, to make a clickbait title, or to just get views. I am honestly and in full telling you my thoughts, my perception, that I think at the very least others should be aware of. I hereby promise to present to you what I see, how I see it, and nothing else. And with that being said, let's go back hundreds of years to discuss the Minstrel Act and how ICP may actually be one.
I went down to the river. I didn't mean to stay, but there I saw so many gals I couldn't get away.
The minstrel show was a type of theater where mostly white actors wore blackface to portray racist stereotypes.
Mary, I'm coming.
And And before TV, movies, and even radio, this is where most white Americans would form their opinions of black culture. It was atrociously offensive and harmful.
It's both racist and it is also very patronizing.
You're going well over the
No.
David connects the minstrels with that.
And not in a that didn't age well PC kind of way. At the time, it was harmful and incredibly offensive. It was openly, widely protested in black publications. And it's important to understand, this was never something everybody was okay with. Simply put, white supremacists just used to have more power. Just like today, where we see these portrayals as painful and senseless, so did the people of the time. And I worry that the everyone's too sensitive now kind of mentality bleeds into very leftist areas, and it's important to clarify this was never okay. And the Minstrel Act was not some footnote in American history. It was, for much of the 1800s, the most popular form of entertainment in America. It was like pop music is today. Everyone was aware of it, if not a huge fan. And after its time in the spotlight, minstrel acts continued on radio and in talent shows, even on television, up until the 1960s, eventually being killed, of course, with the civil rights movement. What I'm saying is, your grandparents probably enjoyed this shit. This is not ancient history, and these are relatively recent tropes in our cultural lexicon. And while by and large the civil rights movement shut down these minstrel characters appearing in pop culture, they still rear their ugly heads, a reminder of our horrible past. And this goes beyond a tasteless random TikTok or Halloween costume parents shouldn't have allowed. While writing this, my girlfriend was on her way to an antique mall, and I asked her to take pictures of all of the pieces that may represent racist tropes. These are all from one visit to one single antique mall here in mid-Missouri. Needless to say, in some places in this country now, these images and objects do not get you called out or canceled. And the popularity of the minstrel character is still so much that it is profitable. So another personal anecdote of mine would be about my hometown, or at least the town I went to high school in, because I'm not sure if I want to claim it, where in 2014, it's my honest shock at it being 2014. The entire cheerleading squad during a powder puff game came onto the field and played the game in blackface. Zero disciplinary action was taken against these cheerleaders, and in an interview with the paper Riverfront Times, the principal at the time, Miss Schmidt, not only defended the cheerleaders, but sympathized with them, saying they don't mean anything by it, no one thinks anything of it. She also went on to empathize with the girls, saying how embarrassed they must be due to being called out on Facebook. So the big question is Juggalo face paint blackface? It certainly looks like it. I mean, the main defense obviously would be that it's clown makeup, but blackface is a type of clown makeup. To me, mainly, it's the simplicity of only using the colors black and white, which has always sparked some sense of familiarity. Full face, only black and white, big smiles. And this isn't to say that ICP ever sat down and hatched the nefarious plot of donning blackface. I don't think they're stupid enough or hateful enough to do that.
You ask the Juggalos in the crowd why we do what we do. We don't have a reason. We don't need a reason. Fuck you!
But we're gonna talk a whole lot about intentions later. And for now, I'm just going to quote Mike Stacklasa from Red Letter Media by saying, maybe you didn't notice it, but your brain did. Because whether or not ICP is doing blackface specifically, they are portraying caricatures, something they learned to successfully do during their long history in professional wrestling. Because of course they understand the need for a character to come on stage or on your screen and to understand quickly where that person fits in the storyline and the world they're creating. They use stereotypes to pull from our own minds a sense of familiarity with these characters. And the images that early ICP were using are undoubtedly that of the bad man character from African American folklore. And this can be anything from baggy pants to a pinstripe suit, anything that can signify to us they are the typical American gangsta. But with ICP, there's a twist. So instead of pouring out the 40 ounce of malt liquor, they have a 2 liter of Faygo soda. And they're calling each other a soft N-word.
Everything you need, just drop a complete miss.
If there's any doubt to this, let's quickly reference an associate of theirs from their record label, a man named Blaze Ya Dead Homie, whose alter ego in rap is that he is literally a murdered gangsta from the 1980s.
I'm everybody homie, but I'm also happen to be dead.
Juggalos use their face paint and alter egos as an excuse to portray black stereotypes.
It is what it is, like, you know, now I go through me and some of my peoples, you know what I'm saying?
And beyond aesthetics, there's a universal behavior that bonds Juggalos to the minstrel act in my mind. It's acting as ignorant as possible.
Whoa, whoa, bitch!
That motherfucking Detroit.
And I'm sure you have seen videos showcasing the gathering of the Juggalos, their big event. And in it, once you go beyond the welcoming demeanor, you'll know they are trying to impress each other with the stupidest behavior they can come up with. From bragging they've just quit their jobs, to putting fireworks in their butts.
Have a firework though. Don't put them in your ass, it fucking hurts.
And doing anything they can to at least briefly stick out as the main character for each other in their shared world. In their actions at Juggalo events and personas as Juggalo rappers, these white people act as ignorantly as possible. Let me read to you this scholarly description of how Juggalos present themselves. Dim-witted, lazy, buffoonish, superstitious, and happy-go-lucky. Sound about right? Nope, that's the Wikipedia definition of minstrel characters. Because these people are cosplaying black stereotypes. And there certainly are parts of these Juggalo alter egos that are authentic parts of that person, but they know which foot to step forward with. And other white rappers have noticed this too. Here's Cage Kennels in 2007 explaining why he's stepped away from his old persona.
It just didn't make sense to me. I felt like I was just perpetuating black stereotypes. And being a white man, doing a black art form, that shit's not cool. You know, like the subtle blackface. I was like, you're walking around like, just perpetuating like this is what black people are, this is what black people look like. So I was just, you know, I'm white, why can't I be white?
But what about Juggalos that aren't white? And how can everything in ICP's giant wave of influence be racist if they are all inclusive? First of all, I've seen ICP live and it is wall-to-wall white people. Just take a quick look at their March on Washington to protest being labeled a gang, and this is who steps up to defend their cultural identity.
Juggalo March 2017, whoop whoop ninjas.
Juggalos being on the gang list, it's about the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Second, sadly, because of the complex relationship many of us have with race, minstrel performers of the old days themselves were oftentimes not white. Speaking of which, I'd now like to transition into talking about some rappers from Psychopathic Records, ICP's record label that they own and run. ICP doesn't just benefit from signing artists to their record label, they seem to be very hands-on and develop these artists, which actually in this case can kind of come off more damning. First up is the rapper ABK. Now, ABK, even just as a name, set me off because in gang culture, there is a tradition of putting a K at the end of other initials, and it's signifying that you are a killer of that gang. So if you had something like the Black Disciples were a group and they went by BDs, then you might tag on the wall with graffiti BDK, meaning you are a Black Disciple killer. And that isn't coincidental. ABK stands for anybody killer. So here you kind of have a softened, easy to consume slice of gang culture being presented by non-gang affiliates for the sake of artistic expression. But what makes me point out ABK is in fact that he is Native American. His indigenous heritage is ABK's shtick.
A bunch of me's within me, but with animal spirits.
He even has an album called This, and that's fine. People from marginalized communities have every right to reclaim the slurs used against them. But it's part of a bigger picture I like to paint of Psychopathic Records, which brings us to the next artist. This is Big Hoodoo. And Big Hoodoo wears some African garb, what looks like African face paint, and is influenced aesthetically by voodoo or hoodoo. And honestly, Big Hoodoo does have one solid banger. It's called Boom Boom Piggy. It is a suicide by cop anthem that is so extremely anti-racist it borders on absurdity.
Kill my people, kill my people. Boom, boom, piggy. About to make murder legal.
Like everything on Psychopathic Records, it's a little sloppy and underproduced for me, but it does kind of come off as a rap version of Cop Killer, and I easily could have seen it playing at the BLM protests in 2020, even though it came out way back in 2016. But unfortunately, I hate to report that because Big Hoodoo has admitted to having a lot of his material ghost-written by other Juggalos as well as Violent J, it kind of lessens the blow of the song. The popularity of the track definitely proves that the majority of Juggalos are vehemently anti-racist, but it's the right message coming to us in the wrong way, i.e. it's being made under the control and watch of white artists.
I know I gotta give credit where credit is due. Hoodoo all comes from Violent J.
Big Hoodoo, while not in an ideal situation, is reclaiming hurtful stereotypes with his aesthetic, and I fully support him doing so. It's only when we take a step back and look through these artists through the lens of Juggalos being a continuation of minstrel traditions that we see these characters exist in the psychopathic world. They are not reclaimed hurtful stereotypes existing in a void. And each member of color exists with an assigned role to represent their ethnicity with a stereotype.
Rap in Detroit was about characters, just like wrestling. You know, what's your gimmick?
Right.
You know, we had our gimmick. We're the Wicked Clowns. Kid Rock was a crazy redneck.
So their acts of reclamation are not isolated incidents or coincidence. While each rapper on their own, using otherwise hateful aesthetic and words, can be examples of reclaimed power, they only exist on this roster as part of a world of hateful stereotypes, where the Native American Juggalo is this, and the Black Juggalo is this. We even have a white one, the Cowboy Juggalo. And Psychopathic Records doesn't just produce music videos and albums. At their peak, they made movies. Their most popular being, of course, Big Money Hustlers. And flat out, this is a blaxploitation movie. Made by white people.
What do they call those movies?
It's called blaxploitation.
Yeah, it's blaxploitation.
Yeah.
Blaxploitation, if you didn't know, is a form of cinema that comes out of the 1970s. It's black artists using a mix of DIY ethics and street culture to create a marketable product on their own terms. It was imperfect and problematic, but if someone was going to be marketing their culture for money, it might as well be themselves. And by and large, black artists held control over the making of this art and also reaped the profits. In Big Money Hustlers, ICP make their own blaxploitation movie with no further commentary. It is chock full of black stereotypes and almost plays like a scene-by-scene video encyclopedia of characters that white people should not portray on film.
Gotta know, luscious mama.
As I was saying, Sugar Bear,
I want the motherfucking bag off.
The movie opens in a black church with the preacher who, I can't do this. What the fuck? I am not analyzing Big Money Hustlers. What the fuck were any of these people thinking? This is surreal. If you are a fan of this, you are fucked. Like, we have not come as far as a culture as we think we have when we are in a world where this came out in the year 2000. And it just didn't come out. It sold over 1 million copies. This debuted at #1 on the Billboard music video charts. This is still highly regarded in the Juggalo world. And if you want to call this liberal performative outrage, that's great, because this is one of the cringiest pieces of shit I have ever seen.
Motherfuckers!
So that's what they wore. my former principal, Miss Schmidt, said to the reporters, there was nothing racist about it. They didn't have any other intention other than to just try to intimidate the underclassmen. And the argument used here to defend blackface in my high school will be the same argument to defend Juggalos against my case. The cheerleaders in blackface and the Juggalos portraying black caricatures are one and the same. They are simply white people with good intentions. They aren't racist. The behavior may look like harmful traditions from the past, but those traditions are now meaningless. But does intention matter? If I get arrested, my argument can't be that I simply didn't know it was illegal. It's my responsibility as a citizen to know what might land me in jail. And it's my responsibility as a white person to not be racist. And I think we all know it's easy to find white people with good intentions who still only call the cops on black people, don't hire black people, say hurtful things, and so on and so on. And the lesson we hear is that it's up to us to not just not be racist, but to be anti-racist. And my lofty concept here is that anti-racism means being aware of the cultural consciousness. Being anti-racist is more than saying aloud that everyone is welcome. It's about being self-aware of how our actions play into standing cultural traditions. So it is your job to know if you are participating in a subtle blackface. It is your job to not have an ignorant alter ego. It is your job to not make a fucking blaxploitation movie. Because, and here's the hard pill to swallow, there is no way to be one of the good ones. No matter what, if you are white, you hold racist beliefs ingrained in you from the hundreds and hundreds of years of cultural history that led to the culture you exist in today. In fact, we all have harmful and untrue beliefs, but right now, I'm talking to other white people. This is your responsibility. But Kelly, isn't classism the real enemy?
No, nigga, it's not just a class thing. It's a class and race thing. But the reason that you hyper-focus on the class part is that that's the only part that really affects you directly.
Whiteness as a concept was invented by rich people for poor people to oppress each other. So fighting classism means understanding we have internalized racism even with the best intentions. There is a culture of racism we all learn from and participate in unintentionally, and no one will unlearn it for us. It will continue to oppress until we fight it ourselves. So that's our lesson in ethics. But where does that leave us with ICP? What were they? What do they represent? What are they now? I always really wanted to like ICP. I think we all love an underdog story, and they were very unexpected members of popular culture.
We are the most hated band in the world.
They're weird, funny, brash, and the whole time I've known about them, it seemed like people were coming down on them. Whether it was Disney pulling their album from the shelves, the FBI later labeling them as a gang, or even just at a party, just someone taking obvious jabs, and you're kind of in the corner, like, wanting to defend them, like, hey man, no, like, they're cool, you just don't know, but like, you don't really know if they're cool.
They cause controversy wherever they
go. They sure do. Like us or hate us, straight up.
Me, I come from a background of DIY punk rock, sewing your own patches, screen printing your own album covers and t-shirts, booking your own shows, and while Juggalos and us never used the same language, we'll say, it always felt like underneath it all, there was that same DIY spirit. Looking at Juggalos, you always got a sense that any one of them could be the next star amongst them. And like crust punks, to each other, each one of them is a rock star.
It's got its own celebrities. There's like people that are known by all Juggalos.
They all equally had a shot at making the next dope album, drawing the next album cover, or shoving a firework in their butt when we least expect it. There's the same lack of hierarchy and same encouragement to just get up and do that I saw in DIY punk.
There's a 12-year-old Juggalo that was in line today, that's probably 10 years from now, that's gonna be be that same person behind the camera giving an interview, you know?
They did it themselves.
When hip hop stole our heart, we said, fuck that, we're doing this now. So we started, recording and pressing the CDs up and selling them.
Except that's about all you can say for them. The saying goes, 80% of success is just showing up. And ICP showed up. They certainly did all those things. Music, festivals, merch, movies, wrestling. They didn't do it well, but they did it. A lot. If you spend time consuming ICP's material, you'll know they spend a lot of time talking about growing up
really, really poor.
Okay. And the fact that despite growing up in poverty, they still managed to end up in a place where they could perform their music for the masses. So when it comes to intentions, they definitely set out with the intention of representing poor people.
For us low-income people, it's been shit.
And that's cool. We need that. Or maybe we needed that. Because in 2020, we've broken free of the monoculture. There's no longer just 20 pop artists to choose from. I don't have to go to the city to find a skate shop, to buy a VHS, to find culture that represents me. Put bluntly, we just have better options. Juggalos cornered the market on trash culture, and trash culture needed representation.
The Juggalos, I believe, are way more successful than ICP's success. Right. Does that make sense?
And despite what a lot of people think, there's nothing wrong with aiming for the lowest common denominator. As long as you don't do this.
You got my money, motherfucker.
The Insane Clown Posse. They weren't a bad group of kids. They were just here to enjoy the music. And maybe about 10% of them were hoping to cause a little problem. But they really didn't have too much trouble, except for Saturday.
Yeah, you
They had a few arrests. But on Sunday, no arrests occurred, no fights.
So my final thought today is one last anecdote from my own life. I used to run a kind of house venue / squat house, and basically there was all sorts of huge characters from the punk world that came through. Now, some of these guys called themselves scumfuck punks, and scumfuck punks are kind of a loose-knit gang. They started as fans of an artist named G.G. Allin. You probably already know G.G. Allin would try to start fights with his fans, he would attack them, he would shit himself and throw the shit at his fans, and basically, these dudes that identified this way, kind of a subculture, right? These scumfuck punks. By and large, these were not good dudes. Without going into detail, I saw horrible things. They were violent, and they were dangerous in some of the worst ways. And Juggalos are not that.
You know, rapists aren't allowed at the gathering of the Juggalos.
And you would still say that the overall experience it has been a positive one for you.
Yeah, no, I'd say it's a positive experience if you don't have any racism in your heart or any bigotry, if you're not harmful to women or children, then I'd just say, yeah, you know, of course it'll be a positive experience.
Juggalos may be misguided, but their good intentions count for something. There are a lot of Juggalos that struggle from drug addiction, poverty, chaos at home, and having any cultural identity help them with those problems.
I didn't like being around anybody. It didn't matter. I just wanted to be by myself. All my thoughts were negative, and that's when I knew it was wrong. You know what I'm saying? Something wasn't right. He's like, you got the depression, definitely. You know what I'm saying? And he said that I suffer from panic attacks. And I'm like, what? So he's like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? But don't sweat it, because I can put you on this medication. I'm taking that for that. And I see a psychiatrist. I'm not quite sure. It's kind of like the Tony Soprano thing. I don't know why I'm talking to her, but something's happening. Something's working. I got my shit under control. I made some changes in my motherfucking life.
Feeling like we're part of something, anything, can often be all we have. So I'm not saying cancel ICP. I'm not saying we should judge Juggalos. I'm saying work on yourself. Do the best you can, starting now. Make your own trash culture.
I look at all the hustles that go on in the Juggalo world, like people that design their own clothing, you know, and sell it on the internet. Like people, I mean, there's so many creative people.
Design a logo, sew a mask, build your kids a backyard wrestling ring. Help start the new thing, the next movement, a scene. Just be authentic and be yourself. Okay guys, that's it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it. Obviously, hit the like, leave a comment, argue with me, subscribe to the channel, look out for more. These take forever to make, so I hope you're patient. Again, I hope you liked it. See you next time.
Family, family, family.